Hello, everybody. It's Nate and Ben with Ben and Nate's questions that we ask people on the internet. I'm one half of your host. My name is Nate Fay. I'm a licensed massage therapist, osteopathic manual therapist, and when I'm not fixing people in my practice, I'm on the road teaching for Dalton Myoskeletal alignment techniques.
And over here is your other co-host, Ben Stone, massage therapist. 20 years plus in practice. I do this and that and all kinds of other things, but we really like doing this podcast called Ben and Nate's Questions. We ask people on the internet. We got a Facebook page, so we invite you to come interact with us, answer the questions that we throw out, and that helps make this show what it is. And what it is, Nate, what it is with you.
What it is, buddy, what we do is we pose a question as often as we can possibly come up with them, and we want you to answer those questions. That makes the show happen. We take your answers and we just deep dive into these sort of improvised, non-scripted discussions about them.
That's right. Everything you see is real. Everything you hear is real. We get down and dirty sometimes.
And Ben, what gets real for me is being in the trenches in the massage room. And as always, before you and I hit the record button, we just have a quick talk and we catch up a little bit. So we were catching up about the trenches today. And, some of the qualms that we have, being a massage therapist. Do you want to share a little bit about that before we get started with tonight's question?
Oh, it's one of those, it's those things that happens that we deal with as massage therapists, and it's not the end of the world, but we have those customers, we have those clients that are special. They want to be treated special, and it's just nice to have somebody like Nate and I were talking earlier, and I just told him, I'm like, I just need to vent a minute, because massage can be a lonely profession. Even though I work next to two other massage therapists, I don't even hardly see them during the day. And so to get the opportunity to talk to somebody that knows what you've been through and can just say, yeah, man, I know what you're saying. Yeah. So it's nice. And so hopefully we can provide some of that with this show, because we're talking about real stuff. We're talking about being in the trenches, as Nate puts it. We're talking about being in our practices and doing the things that sometimes aren't really fun as a massage therapist, like getting foot dust on us, that kind of thing.
It's not a day if you don't get some foot dust on you, but yeah, it's hard. And we've always said this, man, it's hard to be, we play probably off the top of my head, 4 different roles, right? We play the therapist, right? We play janitor, and we play putting out fires with our landlord, and the business we're the business person, we're the front desk person, and then we're like good cop, bad cop, because we have to manage so much, our amazing clients that show up and do everything they should do as a patient, and then the clients that just you're not so sure about sometimes. So Ben, tell me what's good in your world. What else is good in your world before we get started?
Oh, we're getting into spring and the animals are coming out. I'm seeing birds. So I'm, I've been practicing some photography recently. So I'm getting a chance to track down birds and animals and things like that. So that's kind of fun.
Awesome. And outside of birds out in Nebraska, Ben, what other types of wildlife might you commonly see in your neck of the woods?
Well, Nate, I don't know if many people know this, but the world headquarters for the Bigfoot Coalition is located about an hour and a half drive from where I'm at. So there's a Bigfoot museum, and once a year they hold a worldwide Bigfoot convention.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ben, I'm coming out to Omaha, Nebraska in November to teach another myoskeletal class, and I know what I'm doing on my extra day.
I can tell you I've personally not seen a Bigfoot yet, but that's a whole nother, we could make a whole podcast about that. But we got some, you go out to Western Nebraska, we've got Eastern Diamondback rattlesnakes,
Ooh,
or Western Diamondback, I guess they would be. I don't know, they're rattlesnakes, some kind of rattlesnake. We've
something.
got, closer to home, we've got, just a week and a half ago, I saw a coyote. Um, we got fox, we got, the critters.
All the standard stuff.
Yeah.
And then some. I mean, we
Stuff
don't
that,
have Diamondbacks here.
yeah. I mean, they're not around where I'm at, but you go out in the western part of the state, more closer to Colorado, you'll see that kind of stuff.
Cool.
How about you, Nate? What's been going on with you?
Well, I just I'm officially on like a little bit of a break from
Nice,
the
nice.
seminar world. Of course, in July we're going to go pay our tribute and respects to Eric Dalton and celebrate his life's work for a few days in Oklahoma. So I'm looking forward to that in July. And then, much like everybody else, man, this is my favorite time of year. We just have to get the weather right here in Connecticut because it's kind of been a cold and rainy spring so far. So
Well, I know you like to get out on your boat,
yeah,
and
haven't done it yet.
no,
Late this year, late boating season this year. So usually I would have had it out a couple times, but the weather's just not cooperating.
well, I want to ask you a question about boats,
I'm
since
ready.
you are an expert. Where do boats go when they get sick?
Ben, where do boats go when they get sick?
To the dock.
I love it. And that's where mine will be going soon.
Boom, boom. Yes.
Hey, that's interesting, by the way, too, because something did happen today in Connecticut. We had a massive accident on one of the highways by my practice. Huge 18 wheeler overturned, and I shouldn't laugh about this, but it was a delivery truck for Vicks Vapo Rub
Ooh.
that overturned. But the good news was there was no congestion on the highway.
I love it. You got it. You got one in yourself.
I never get
Nice.
one in. So
Nice.
hey, listen, if people are still listening after that, let's talk about what we're here to talk about tonight, which is what, Mr. Ben Stone?
Oh, yeah. We're going to bring up one of the questions that we asked you people over the internet through the social medias, more specifically, our Facebook page. The question we posed to everyone reads: what's a continuing ed class that completely changed the way you work, and why?
Dun dun dun.
That's
That's a good
that's a heavy
question.
question, isn't it?
That is a heavy question. Massage itself, right? Especially in the States and the United States, I think we rely heavily on continuing education, especially with licensure and, minimal, I really would say minimal educational requirements across the board.
Yeah,
So I think we
compared to
rely
some other
heavily on
countries,
that.
right?
Yeah,
Because
for
what
sure. We're
Canada's 2,000 hours. I don't know what overseas, Europe has for initial licensing, schooling, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Canada comes to mind. The average therapist is getting 2,200 hours of education, and having taught up there and learning the continuing education business up in Canada, they don't really rely too heavily on it. And so continuing education, while people go, it's not, here, classes, you might have 20, 30, 40 people in them. And up there, it's just not necessarily thought of the way we think about it. So that's why I really like this question, because I almost look at continuing education for us as like our postgraduate work, really. Like, where are we going to go with our massage career after we get out of school? And you pose this question, and I like it. I like it, Ben. So what say you?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's kind of two different mm, approaches to continuing education. I have to get it done and check the box, and I want to learn everything that I can. There's kind of, I don't know, do you see that in people, two different kinds of people that are looking for education?
Hard to say. In my own experience as a continuing ed teacher, I don't get a lot of that in my classes, so I can't say that people show up and they're like, "Oh boy, what did I get myself into?" I only came here to check the box kind of thing. So I personally haven't experienced that, myself. However, there are some classes like when I have to renew my CEs, or there are a couple credits and that you have to kind of divide out. Guilty as charged that I've done that myself with certain classes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has not ever done that. And as I evolved through my career, I mean, I was guilty in the beginning, but you don't know what you don't know. So, you had this great opportunity to learn from some great educators right out the get go. I went to a school that was, mainly focused on getting me to work in a spa setting. I learned stuff like how to apply a mud scrub, how to apply facials. I learned that stuff in school. And the first continuing education class I took was probably less than a month after I got my license, and it was neuromuscular work from, I think, Paul St. John. Is that
Very cool.
neuromuscular? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yes.
was fantastic. And I took as much of that as I could, because it was I was like, I didn't learn this in school.
Hmm.
But also I took some other continuing education classes that I'll just say it, they sucked. And they
Mhm.
kind of ruined me as like, and I didn't know what the whole continuing education world was about. I mean, I knew I needed it to renew my license and to renew my national certification, that kind of thing. But it didn't turn into a different, yearning to learn until probably later on in my career.
What was continuing education like in your area on and about the time that you were finishing up with school? Like in terms of like frequency and availability.
Yeah, probably not a lot of what I'm going to call better continuing education, like nationally recognized stuff. It was a lot of local stuff,
Yeah.
and our requirements were at that time 24 hours every 2 years,
Yeah.
and they've since lowered it to 16 hours every 2 years.
Got it. Okay. But you had this opportunity, right? So you come out of school and you have this opportunity to take, as you said, Paul St. John's neuromuscular therapy, which, probably at that time was, I would imagine that must have been mind blowing coming out of massage school studying something like that.
Yeah, no, it was Delaney. Delaney.
Got it.
I So long
That's
ago I
okay.
don't even remember.
That's all right. Well, either way.
But I remember the basic concepts. But yeah, so having that opportunity, I was like, yeah, I didn't even know that was probably one of the better educations that I experienced. Because then I went in and took, like, underwater basket weaving with head massage. And I just made that up, but that kind of stuff. I took a
Right.
knockoff class to John Barnes's myofascial work. It was called myofascial connections or something like that, and it really turned me off of any type of myofascial work, just because I didn't get into it. But there have been some decent educators that I've been to along the way.
Yeah. Cool. Love it.
How about you? Like, what kind of requirements did you have after finishing school, and what did you have to do? What was the environment like for continuing ed when you graduated massage school?
Man, the environment in Connecticut 20 plus years ago was booming. And I remember as a young massage therapy student at our school here in Connecticut, Connecticut Center for Massage Therapy, a privately owned institution, and they were hosting continuing education classes like weekend after weekend after weekend. And I didn't really know it at that time. And they would send out these like booklets, advertising who was coming, class descriptions. I mean, these really beautiful booklets. And little did I know, and I remember seeing names like Bob King, George Casalius, James Wozlowski, Eric Dalton came up this, it came up this way back in the day. And I just didn't know it at the time. I didn't know, who these people really were and what that life was all about. However, I was a pretty ambitious massage student, so I actually started taking continuing education classes while I was still a massage student. And so I just started showing up to classes, but to mimic what you said, underwater massage, for your foot and ankle or something, just these really kind of goofy things. And probably the first real education class that I took that seemed at the time, of course it wasn't, but seemed pertinent to what I was going to be doing was a hot stone massage class. And I thought, man, this is going to be it. And then I thought, that hot stone massage is like really hard to do. Got these rocks, they're hot, it's wet, it's just like a mess. I was so not good at that. So not good.
Yeah.
But anyway, classes like that, or I remember actually, I think it was the first one, how to go deep without using your hands. And it was sort of like using your feet, but not necessarily with the bars. And that was kind of cool. But then I thought, man, like, what am I, again, it was adding up. Like, when am I really gonna like use this stuff? But I think coming out of massage school at that time, I had an interest in Thai massage. And we also had a well-known Thai massage instructor that was part of the school. Great guy by the name of Rick Haish or Heishi. Apologies if I didn't pronounce your last name correctly, but Rick was just a really smart, cool guy. Kind of was drawn to him. And Rick taught these, several week courses in Thai massage, like these deep immersive classes. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's exactly what I want to do. And as soon as I finished up with massage school, I started investing all my time and money with Rick, only to find out that that work is beautiful. It's really cool from a technical aspect, but my fat and flexible ass could not put people in those positions for 90 minutes. I was like, I can run 10 miles and I don't sweat at all. It's kind of weird. But doing that work, oh my God, I was like, what is wrong with me?
And I often hear people say that, oh, I want to learn Thai massage and I'm learning Thai massage and I can't wait to go to Thailand and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I thought that's where I was gonna be. I thought I was just gonna like start doing all that stuff, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I can't do this to save my life. But it was okay. I was kind of okay with it when it was all said and done. And I did like weeks and weeks and weeks and hours, and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And man, I was just like, I cannot do this work at all. I just can't do it.
But it probably wasn't money wasted. There's probably something that you
No.
gained and you still know now and can use either the knowledge or maybe even some of the stuff.
Yeah, man, that was 20 years ago. I have a deep, deep respect for that work and the art, the art of Thai massage and the people that do it and the sort of the routines and the technical aspect. And yeah, super, super cool stuff. But
Yeah,
not for me.
that's awesome. So I want to
So then
find
what
out
happened next? What happened next for
what
you?
what happened next for me. Oh man, I mean, where do, where do you go with the story? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to bore the listeners here.
That's all right. Well, let's what do you think?
I think I want to get into what some people replied to this question as on our webpage or on our Facebook page. What were some of the things that really got people? What was our question again? What changed the way people work and why?
Yeah.
That was the question. I want to get into some of the things that other people saw that has changed how they work. And I already know one of them because of who you are and who I'm affiliated with. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
And we had an overwhelming number of people talk about Eric Dalton's work in Moscow's alignment therapy. And I think about that a lot too, because, and again, not just because I'm like immersed in it, but, I think about how it changed my life. But back to what you and I said earlier about how, I kind of view continuing education as more of like our postgraduate work and this whole specialization thing, if you feel like you need to special. And I think what was probably so, I don't know, life changing and different about Eric was bringing fields of bodies of work to the massage field that massage therapists just weren't getting. So, this element of osteopathy and assessments, complicated conditions and compensatory patterns and how to view the body in some of these manners and these techniques that really just seem to work for some reason. And sometimes you don't always know why, or sometimes you can have a big narrative behind it. So it's a pretty fascinating thing when obviously someone comes in with low back pain and now you have some of these tools and this understanding to like assess, listen, and then apply a technique. And then the person says, well, I feel better, versus 3 months ago, I was just drilling my elbow into their back, having no idea what I was doing, and they weren't getting better.
No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain.
Hmm.
So, I love seeing that stuff. And of course, there's a lot of great teachers in our field, and there's a lot of great continuing education in our field. So, I mean, while myoskeletal alignment technique, which is near and dear to our hearts, I also like that people talked about some other stuff as well.
Yeah, I was gonna go through and kind of count how many people mentioned myoskeletal work.
A
There's
lot.
pretty much 90%. One, two, three, four. Oh, I mean, we've got some people who talked about Paul Kelly's work
Yeah.
and James Laszlowski's work. Um,
Yeah. People
I
talk
don't know.
about cupping, cupping
Cupping. There we
therapies,
go. Yeah.
fascial stretch therapies, something called spontaneous muscle release, SMRT, which I'm not familiar with. Are you familiar with that?
No, no, I've never taken a class, and the thing that I always like to talk about too is we have to have a story to justify what we do,
Yeah.
whether it's actually what we're doing or not. I think it helps the therapeutic process, and it helps to achieve a therapeutic result if we have a story that makes sense behind what we're doing. And I'm not trying to belittle anyone's work or anything like that, but there's so much we don't know about the body. And part of me just thinks, if we have an approach that makes sense to us and the people we're working on, whether it is, I don't know, it can be proven or not proven, doesn't matter. If it helps them, then why not? That's
Mhm.
kind of, I don't know, that I may be simplifying things too much, but
Let's, and I wish some people did list their why. A lot of people listed the modality or the class, but some people really didn't go into why. And I like that a few people did. Our good friend Wyatt talked about James Laszlowski's work, and he gave a good why. He talked about how it facilitated this epiphany that maybe beating my clients wasn't helping the way that I thought, and introduced the concept of orthopedic testing to specify treatment. And that's what he feel like he was missing from his treatments up to that point. So that's like a good why, right?
that
So
is, and we've talked about this in past episodes, how many massage therapists actually do any kind of assessment. I know I've told you my story. Like I still very rarely run across any massage therapist that I go to that will do very much of an assessment other than just verbal. Like, oh, what do we need to work on? And but granted, I don't have major problems, so that I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh.
it's still nice to get looked at though, because I have clients that kind of expect me to assess them. And I have clients that come in and they say, I'm feeling really good today, but I want you to take a look at me before I get on the table. And I think that's kind of cool that they're so in tune with their body that they want to get my hit before I just lay them down.
Yeah, they get
But
used
yeah,
to, there's a
and they get used
purpose
to it.
behind what you're doing. So, what do we call that? Clinical work, therapeutic work, orthopedic work? I don't know. But there's a difference between the purpose for that and the purpose for, relaxation work or,
Totally.
Swedish work.
Sure.
That they're both valuable, but they have a different approach.
Right. Right. And of course, that comes down to client goals for the session too.
Right.
But and people talked about, just getting results. Everybody likes results. We like it when we get results. Our clients love it when we get results. So again, people talked about James and helping them to become a better and more confident therapist, right? So a lot of these things help you to become a better and more confident therapist, which is like pretty cool. And of course, interestingly enough, this goes without saying, I would take a wild guess that most of these teachers mentioned probably would be smart enough to also say that they also all learned from Eric in some regards. And I know they do. I know James talks about Eric all the time, and I know Paul Kelly, of course, had a long career and a long relationship with Eric, and which is cool to see. And it's cool to see how some of those people have grown in their own world of branded body work, which is great.
Well, why don't you tell me how myoskeletal alignment work has changed the way you work? Like,
Well,
can you list any specifics or any stories or anything about how it changed how you work?
I think it goes deeper than that for me because, the journey wasn't from Thai massage to Eric's work. And I have to kind of give credit where credit is due because my first dive into what we might call therapeutic massage or orthopedic massage was Whitney Lowe. And one of our teachers when I was in massage school taught out of Whitney Lowe's book. So I got an early exposure to that as a massage student. So after the whole Thai massage thing didn't work out for me, I thought, man, I want to check out Whitney's work. And Whitney had, I not only had, but has an online plus live hour program, much like, Miles Scouts Alignment and some of these other programs do. And I started working through Whitney's online and home video program and took some live classes. And Whitney really just made assessments make sense to me. And Whitney, from my perspective, and maybe people disagree with us, and maybe Whitney disagrees with us, but Whitney, from my perspective, I learned a lot of assessments, but I never felt like I learned techniques to go along with these assessments. And Whitney did teach techniques, so I don't want to take that away from anybody, but I never felt like the correlation in my mind didn't make sense. And, probably around the same time I got into massage school, because I originally wanted to go to chiropractic college. And one of my teachers says, well, check this guy out, which was Eric Dalton, gave me a video of Eric Dalton's work. And I remember going home and putting on one of these videos and watching it. And again, I remember watching the first video I saw, and there's Eric assessing Paul, drawing these X's on him and having him walk and have him do all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there going, well, I just had 2 years of massage school of laying people on the table and rubbing them down. How do I go from rubbing them down to having them walk around my room with lines and arrows and X's and dots? And I just couldn't wrap my head around it, Ben. And it was just like, I just felt so overwhelmed. So backpedaling into Whitney's classes helped to sort of put this element of like people could come in, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And I could be like, okay, raise your arm this way. Okay, do this, hold your arms here. Don't let me push down. Turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right. And even though I didn't know what I was doing, then I could put them on the table and work on them. And maybe there was some sort of now measurable result. And once I got through Whitney's stuff, I kind of felt ready for Eric's work. And by the way, people listening to this, I don't want you to feel like you have to go through something else in order to get to Eric's work. This was just a different time in our career, Ben. And you and I have said this over and over again that 20 years ago, there was no internet. Well, there was internet, but it was not the internet that we have today. And there wasn't shows like this to listen to. I didn't have brains to pick. We were on our own. We were completely on our own and hacking our way through this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like so at that time I felt like I needed point A to get to point B to get to point C, whereas now I think everybody has a very different advantage in terms of everything. But that's where I was at that time. And then I started getting into Eric's work and doing the home study courses and then taking the stuff back to my clients. And I just really didn't know what I was doing. And I'm like, you know what? I got to get to a live class. I have to. And I went and I took a live class, was with Paul Kelly teaching it when Paul Kelly was teaching for Eric. And that's where I was finally like, okay, we're on to something. And that was probably 14 or 15. Yeah, somewhere around then. And then I started taking, now I knew how to apply these techniques. And then I had these assessments from Whitney. And then all of a sudden, people were like, I don't know what you did last session, but like my neck's never felt better. Of course, I didn't know what I did either. Right. And
Yeah.
at that point, I'm like, okay, you got to do this. Right. You got to do this. And I just, at that point, went all in, all in, and just started nonstop studying. Man, I was playing in a cover band at the time. I was going to gigs with my Dalton books and in between sets, going, and back in the van and studying and coming home at 2 in the morning and studying. And I was just all in, all in.
Nice.
Yeah. And, it completely changed the way I work. I mean, I actually think about this. Do you do massage some days and do you think, man, I was not doing this work 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Like, can you even remember your work 20 years ago?
It's a slow transition. And if you were to take snapshots of when you were, I'm going to call it 1 years old in massage,
Yeah.
versus when you were 4 years old, versus when you're, 8 years into your career, there's definitely going to be, you know, differences, but I think, it's a slow transition. Yeah. I don't think you can just go from, the way you worked straight out of massage school to how you work now.
Right.
Um, it's just, there might be times in there where there is a steep transition into what you do different, but also there's slow, gradual transitions as you evolve.
Yeah, there sure is, man. And it takes a village. So, honestly, the question is, what's a continuing ed class that completely changed the way you work? And, it's kind of weird for me to say this, but I have to, I almost have to say it was Whitney Lowe's orthopedic massage therapy that started to change the way I worked. And it was, Dalton that I just made me go, that I almost consider Dalton more life changing than work, in a lot of ways than I do work changing. But I have to, I don't want to forget about my roots and just kind of forget about that stuff because that's the reality of it. And so yeah, that's kind of how
That's
that went.
interesting. So much like you, I kind of got into Tom Myers stuff. I
Yeah.
took some classes from his instructors, and then I also got a little bit into oh, I can't remember his name now. Doug Nelson, who does precision
Yeah.
neuromuscular. So I kind of was learning from them, and I that's when I really found out that massage is not just Swedish massage. You can work on people, and they can keep their clothes on for the most part. They can just wear shorts and a sports bra, that kind of thing, and you can do stuff while they're on their side and while they're seated and while they're standing. You can do work, and that kind of opened my eyes to there's a whole different world of approaching people, and I really liked it because I'm like, this whole spa thing is not my deal. It's like, yeah, I tried it for a
Yeah.
while. I was like, I don't like doing the facials. I don't like doing the mud scrubs. Like, I've done all that. I want something with more substance. And so then I came across a friend that we had on the show not that long ago, Eric Stevenson, and he kind of,
Yeah.
he teaches some technique, but where I really think he shines is the connection part. He teaches how you connect with people and how you create those relationships, and how you create boundaries, and how you create a drama-free workspace and all this stuff. And that's where I started. He actually introduced me to some Eric Dalton stuff, which I'd already been dabbling in Eric Dalton stuff here and there from videos I came across the internet. And so then putting it all together is like, how do I connect with people? How do I work with people? And it just kind of slowly evolved into what I do today, which probably in 5 years I'll look back to today, and like what I do today will be completely different than what I'm doing 5 years from now.
Yeah. And it's a kind of a cool thing because, and we've talked about this before, like where do you go from here 20 years in? And I've been taking some classes online with doing some osteopathic courses and just kind of furthering my studies in that realm. And it's just been great. And I'm finally starting to see that stuff evolve, like in my techniques and what I do in my own clinic. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to do some stuff. And even my longtime clients are like, "You've never done that before, right?" It's nice to hear. It's cool to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking back about this question, and like, how did it change the way you work? Like, and you gave us your version, your story. I talked about my story, and as I reflect back on it, there's no like one specific example of how it changed the work. It's just kind of, it inspired a different way of working, a different way of
Yeah.
looking at things. And it wasn't an overnight change. It was an
No.
evolution in approaches, in thinking, in knowledge, all of that stuff. And so I'm thinking about this question on a deeper level, as not just a continuing ed class that changed how you work, but how do you change how you work?
Right. It takes years and it's like, if we talk about how did so how did it change the work, right? So all of a sudden one day, you're in your clinic, people come in, they fill out their intake, you say, "Okay, I see you have neck pain, low back pain, some foot and ankle pain. Cool. I'm gonna have you get undressed, get on the table. I'll be back in 2 minutes." You come in, you do a 60-minute session, you don't say a word, they get up, how do you feel? Right? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, one day, a person comes in and I have neck pain, low back pain, foot and ankle pain. And all of a sudden, that first day you do it, you're like, "Okay, I'm going to have you stand up and I'm going to have you turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right. I'm going to put my hands here and feel this and do that. And I'm going to put my hands underneath your feet. And I want you to walk up and down my room. And okay, now I'm going to have you get undressed, get on the table, and you work on it for an hour and nothing said, right? That's like the first time you've done an assessment because you still don't know what you did. And people come back and they say, "Well, I don't know what you did that time, but do it again." And now it's like, well, I just learned this cool joint mobilization. So now I'm going to put my thumbs here and I'm going to assess this and do that. And that's like the next session. So those are the changes of like, how did it change how you work? Well, that's how it changed. You went from doing and like Rick once again, Rick Hayes for some reason is getting mentioned several times in tonight's podcast. But I remember when a Thai massage class, Rick goes, "What's up with naked massage anyway? What's up with naked table massage? You don't have to do that." And as a young massage therapist, I was like, "Well, what does this guy mean?" And so yeah, the involvement of going from naked table massage at an hour to now throwing in some assessments, to now adding in some of these new techniques, and now having the confidence to say, "Hey, at your next session, can you just come in a pair of shorts and a tank top? And let's see how that goes."
Yeah.
But all that stuff, right? All that stuff to change the way I practiced or you practice it probably took me 2 or 3 years to like evolve into that. It wasn't one session. I talk about my bass lessons once in a while. So I had my bass lesson last Wednesday. So I'm 9 months into doing this, in
Mhm.
my adult years. And Anthony always starts off, how's your practicing going? Do you have any questions? And I said, well, this past lesson was my favorite lesson. And he says, man, 9 months into my program, people always say they finally had their favorite lesson because stuff's now coming out of you, right? Everything's making sense. And it took 9 months to doing stuff like the basics to advanced complicated theory. And now it's coming out, right? And it took 9 months to get there. It wasn't one lesson, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't going to one Eric Dalton class that I came back to my clinic and I was like, cool, I'm Eric Dalton now. It takes years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing some photography mentoring for the next 8-10 weeks or so, and I'm only into week 2. And just the stuff that's getting thrown at me, it's
Oh, yeah.
like I can't even process it. But I'm looking forward to working through it and doing the things because I know if I put in the time, at some point that's going to happen. It's like, oh, it's not going to be a huge overnight change, but it's just little things get tweaked here and there. And I think you said that really well. It's not, it's an evolution over time. It's not a one week, one night change. And we've talked about this before. We have massage therapists that ask, well, how do you incorporate this work into your practice? It's like, well, you just incorporate it however you
Yeah.
can, slowly, bit by bit, as you evolve and decide what's going to be your work. How are you going to interpret the work? How are you going to apply the work? How are you going to make it yours over time?
And I don't know why I'm just thinking about this. I'm thinking of a few months ago and hanging out with Eric in Costa Rica. And Eric, man, like 40 years into his career at 80 years old, Eric didn't even know like he was Eric Dalton. And I don't mean that because he was losing his mind. He wasn't, but I mean it like he didn't understand, he didn't even know the sort of the legacy, and he hated that word, but he didn't he couldn't fathom it. He couldn't fathom like his own work and the evolution of his own work. So and that was 40 years later. And he was still standing back going, why do all these people come here? He goes, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So the photography thing, right? Kids' egos. I have a 15-year-old, and he's getting into golf now. And I said, Mike, I said, why don't you take a golf lesson? I don't need to. I don't need to. And we all had that ego back
Oh
in the day.
man, when I was 15, I knew everything.
And even in my 30s, I was like, I don't need to take another bass lesson. I have a degree in music performance. I don't need to take another bass lesson, right? It's the worst thinking ever.
Yeah.
So, but we all grow up at some point, I guess,
It's
supposedly.
always evolving. When we stop
Always.
evolving and wanting to learn. So one of my favorite quotes is the larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of wonder.
Yeah, I love that.
It's one of my favorite quotes.
And you can always tell, I think that I think you and I ask some really important questions on the internet. But you can always tell, excuse me, you can always tell which questions, massage therapists really hit home with them. And I think this was one that really hit home with people. And people got excited to talk about, their own, people like to talk about their own successes. And a lot of people like to talk about their own successes and give credit out there to a lot of these educators.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the first experiences I had at the big Oklahoma City workshop, as I got to talking to people. And I remember one day, one of those times, I don't know if it was the first time or the second time, I brought my camera and I started recording people and asking them questions because that's what I do.
Right.
but I was interviewing people. I think you might be in there. I interviewed like probably 20 or 30 people, I think. And I just got to meet these people and understand like these people are just like me. They just want to learn. They just want to keep learning and learning and learning. And I was like, these are my people. I love it. I found my people.
So good, man. So good. Trying to think what else we had in here. If there was any other ones, I'm just kind of looking along the lines here. But yeah, those were the big ones. So we had a lot of Miles Scouts, a lot of James, fascial stretch, cupping. There's a lot of therapists that do cupping out there. So kind of
Yeah.
cool that people jumped in and talked about what they love to do. And you know, I don't know if this is true or not, but sometimes I don't know if Swedish massage or relaxation or spa massage seems to maybe sometimes get put by the wayside, but man, there are there's some real incredible spa therapists out there that I wish they would kind of chime in on these questions too and talk about that stuff. Be great to hear from them.
Yeah, I think a lot of our following, a lot of our listeners are probably in the crowd of musculoskeletal alignment work. So we're gonna need to find out how we can branch out. So we're gonna have to start putting ourselves, getting ourselves out of our comfort zone. What do you think about
We
that?
are. I think
Yeah,
we have to. I think that's
yeah,
going to be next deal. Well, this was a
cool.
fun one tonight, Ben. It's a late Tuesday night. You and I had a long client day, but I think we held it together tonight.
Yeah, tell me what you learned tonight. What impressed you the most out of what we talked about?
Just evolution, man. Just evolution. Like you got to give the stuff time to develop when you learn something new. And I say it constantly in my classes. Adults are tough. We are like so tough on ourselves that we feel like we have to get it like the first time. And I love seeing a lot of my repeat uh, colleagues come back to my classes like it's their third or fourth time, and they're like, "Man, I finally got it. I finally got it." Right, and that's cool to hear, and it's sort of a testament to everybody else to say, "See, you got to keep practicing." How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice.
Practice, baby.
Right.
And another thing, another quote that I'm going to throw out there. This comes from the uh, Chinese tradition, but in the mind of a beginner, everything is possible. In the mind of the master, possibilities are few.
Yeah.
So always a beginner, always questioning, always wanting to learn. And I think both you and I, and a lot of people who answered this question, are on that same path of always wanting to find out more because there's always the opportunity to learn more.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my big takeaway: learning more.
Well, I that's good, man, and I love that takeaway because I'll tell you one of the most I shouldn't say disappointing because it doesn't affect my life too much, but I always think it's too bad when I hear somebody say, "I got this." Right? Like, "Oh, I already know this. I already know how to do this." Right? That's like
I already took that class once.
it's the worst thing that I hear. And and again, to put it back to music, that's why whenever I take lessons with Anthony and he says, "Do you have any questions?" And I say, "You know what, Anthony?" I said, "I'm gonna have questions in about 30 minutes as we get through this lesson." And I always tell Anthony that I'm afraid to tell him I got it because just when I think I have it, he, you know, picks it up a notch. So, and
I love it. And that's what a good teacher or mentor does. They get you thinking in ways that you didn't think were possible.
right. So listen, if you're listening and you're in a class and you say, "I got this," don't ever say that. There's
Well,
my answer, my inspirational quote for the day. You don't got this.
but one thing we do got is two microphones. We got a podcast and we have a Facebook page called Ben and Nate's Questions We Ask People on the Internet. So if you like this show, if you're into what we have to talk about, Nate, tell them how they can support the show.
Answer our questions. We need you to answer those questions on that Facebook page so that we can keep doing this thing. And if you have a question you want us to discuss, don't be afraid to private message us. And we like your private messages better than those Facebook AI bots that we get.
Yeah, they keep telling us they're going to shut us down, but no AI is going to shut
Nobody's
us
shutting
down.
us down. And then listen to us, because man, I look at those stats on Spotify, and I like to know what shows were more interesting for you guys.
Well, awesome. That's another episode of Ben and Nate's Question We Ask People on the internet. Thank you for listening. This was episode 30 something. We're in the high 30s now. 37, 38. Price somewhere around in there. So once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
See you in the future, like Dippin' Dots.
Like Back to the Future. Marty McFly.
See you next time.